You all read the title? I'm going to be talking about why The Hunchback of Notre Dame is the superior version of Wish and Everywhere, because The Hunchback is the one movie that I highly recommend you watch before you watch my analysis of a video. I have to compare the two together because both movies have an active goat, like literally a goat, in the movie, and they are so similar to each other, it's mind baffling. There's a female dark skinned protagonist that wants to change the world, the villains are ruling the town, a goat, obviously, in both movies, the presence of the supernatural, I'll get into more detail like that later. The villains are in charge of the protagonist's future and like their upraising and the people around them every so often. Songs are being sung by each and every character every so often to communicate a main point or theme. You can't make this shit up. They are so scarily similar. It's like Wish is trying to cover up the Hunchback of Notre Dame in every which way, which I believed only sent fuel to the fire and asked more people to watch the Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is what I'm also promoting, and I want you to be able to discover it and enjoy it. I only got introduced to it after I saw the millions of other users on the internet comparing the two villain songs of, what was it? Wish, like villain song, I'm gonna remember it, and the Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hellfire, by Frollo. Man, that shit smacks so hard, I had to listen to it a second time outside of the movie. Starting things off, I want to say that The Hunchback of Notre Dame and Wish start off their stories in both very interesting ways. They both open up with a prologue or like a chapter before, suggesting how did this town end up to be the way it was with the protagonist and everything else. What Wish does is interesting. Wish opens up talking about the villain. Actually, both movies talk about the villain. Starting the story off correctly, I want to talk about how both stories start off because they both open up with like a little play showing that this is a little book, this is a little context that you need to understand how the story takes place and what is happening. And then it moves into like the day of a life of the story. But it's important to remember that both these movies are set for children, but The Hunchback of Notre Dame makes this very abundantly clear because the Hunchback makes it very clear that its intended audience is for kids by literally showing kids, but they portray a lot of dark themes and settings. So they're teaching kids early on, like, hey, this isn't your average tip of the mill movie. Move on if you can't handle it. So, the reason they do this, or the reason for these kinds of prologues, is to explain why the villains are the way they are now, and to explain why they're going to behave the way they are in the future. So, for the Hunchback of Notre Dame, Frollo behaves, or like his character introduction. It really starts off by showing Frollo as the despicable evil who can't be bothered, or who is just so evil like he enjoys it, and it's part of his thing. I'm going to get into that enjoying part later. Don't dunk me on the internet for it. But Frollo starts off this movie by arresting the gypsy for simply existing, chases down a woman, and kills her for simply defying him, and then figures out what she was carrying or hiding from him, and then discovers the baby being so ugly that he had to drown it. The only thing stopping him from drowning the baby and defying the Pope was the fear instilled from him by the eyes of Notre Dame. Basically, people would like to say it's guilt. I'm not going to focus on that in this video, but I am going to say that Frollo being terrified, so much so that he considers adopting a child, kind of justifies or kind of like sets up the movie perfectly, showing us the dynamic between the antagonist and the villain and like the protagonist is very well done. And it gives us a solid reason as to why the protagonist and the antagonist behave the way that they will with each other. As for now, Wish does something similar, but the thing is, they summarize it all in the prelogue, like in that little chapter book, like the Once Upon a Time stuff, and that's the only time we get about King Magnifico's backstory. That's it. Like, he mentions it like once or twice in like the movie, but like we're never given explicit scenes or shots showing his backstory, showing what happened to its village, showing what happened. Like, we never get any of this stuff. We were just told it, and that's about it. I didn't realize how frustrating that was until I saw The Hunchback of Notre Dame. But basically, from what I assume from the movie, I'm assuming by the way, his whole town got burned. Broski decided to change his life, turn it upside down by learning magic, granting random people across the land wishes, and then somehow decided it was a good idea to seclude himself to a land where he can grant any people's wishes that choose to live there with him. Which I would assume is to prevent the same uprising that would nuke his town again. He chose not to grant wishes to certain people. Why? We don't know. The suggestion he suggests is that he doesn't want his perfect country to get burned to the ground because the wishes are not clearly defined. The parameters are not clear, so it's better playing safe than sorry than to grant these dangerous wishes than to risk the people's lives in jeopardy. Moving on, raising the stakes and tension. Basically answering the question, is the villain in the right in any regards? Like, is there some truth in what the villain is saying? Because both villains gave the protagonist a warning not to travel down the route that they choose to go on, otherwise they will be punished. For the Hunchback of Notre Dame, Quasimodo deciding to go to the Festival of Fools. I mean, I don't know if Frollo was saying this to protect Quasimodo from being tortured in the Festival of Fools, although there's a strong argument against it. But Frollo adamantly prevented Quasimodo from leaving the bell tower, whether it be for his own protection or not, can be debated. But what I will talk about is that during the Festival of Fools, Quasimodo at first is treated like a king in the Festival of Fools until the people turn against him for being so ugly and hideous. It is literally social shaming, and it's an awful experience for the poor guy. This drives home the point for Quasimodo that he should have listened to his master and stayed in the bell tower. Otherwise, none of the social shaming, none of this torture, none of this would have ever happened to him. But you know what's interesting? Frollo had both the authority and the power to stop and save Quasimodo from any of this from happening to the poor lad. But we saw that Frollo intentionally ignored Quasimodo's plea for help, and when he was getting tortured and meant to fend for himself, he smiled and enjoyed the torture. The only moment he spoke up and talked was when Esmeralda was trying to free him. You know what's interesting? We never see anything of that similar regard in Wish. And I wish we did. Because in the wishing ceremony, what? No. Yeah, in the wishing ceremony where what was her name? The lady. I'm just going to call her the lady. I don't remember her name. The lady was trying to argue that you should grant these people's wishes. You should grant my granddad's wishes. He's like, "No. You know what? I will do it. And let's see what's going to happen." So he grants the lady her wish for like cutting the best ribbon to make the perfect dress. But we don't see how that disaster goes completely out of hand. See in my notes now, it says her name is Sasha. You know, your protagonist did a great job being memorable if you can't even remember their name. Okay. This is the point. I was wishing in Wish, I'm going to stop that pun. I was hoping in Wish that they would show something like this, where like the protagonist's words is taken or like the protagonist goes out of their way to make this wish happen, but then it completely backfires on them, and now the villain has to step in and save them, or he doesn't even do that. His friends have to save or make up for the Asha's mistake, and the king was just he could have completely prevented this from even happening to begin with. Because the king, this is what I wanted to see, because the king, we saw him verbally give a warning, but we never saw the consequence for King Magnifico granting a stray wish that Asha wanted for it to happen. It went like it should have gone horribly wrong for the townspeople, and Asha should have like admitted her mistake, only for King Magnifico to fix it. Like this is what should have happened. But unfortunately, we don't get to have our cake and eat it too in this movie. Okay, now I want to talk about the main point of this movie, the two villain songs, because holy shit. Because these were the two highlights, and this is what a lot of people ended up talking about. It's one of the best parts. It's, if not the best part, something most memorable, okay? Because with the movie, there was a lot of songs and compositions. And with movies like this, if you didn't like the songs, you're not going to like the movie. However, for Frollo's song, what we find is very interesting. It's talking about the main themes, such as lust, love, and greed, where lust and love are taken in two very different and wrong ways. And you know what's interesting? It's right after Quasimodo's little song about Esmeralda might have feelings for him, because Esmeralda kissed him on the cheek, and then his friends are egging him on that she might like him, or like he finally found the love of his life or something like that. And then immediately after, we have Frollo's song of Hellfire just displaying how this love could be atrocious and be taken in a negative light, with lyrics such as "Let her be mine and mine alone," And if she's not mine, may she burn in the fire of hell. Like, you can't make this up. The authors clearly knew what they were doing, and they made the two so diametrically opposed. Quasimodo, we actually don't know if Quasimodo would have made like this decision. Like, no, they clearly show that lusting was the wrong point here. They barely know each other. Esmeralda hasn't like quote unquote shown feelings of affection, like love, for Quasimodo, and to assume the worst is incredibly incorrect. And so showing Frollo's song of Hellfire, man, that shit slapped. With like the violins, the upbeats, the chants, holy fuck. And then the theme about fire. Like there were so many people in the comments just talking about how good the song was and how strong the symbolism was. Like his prayers have been immediately answered, and then he goes into this ultimatum where he chooses to burn down Paris just to find a girl. And then he prays not to God but to the fire. And he is a religious man. And then Disney taking the extra steps of showing like what, a cult like mentality, and him worshiping or like talking to a cult. Like, you can't make this stuff up. Like, it directly plays into the theme of love and acceptance, and it shows how Frollo is like, he is in control. At the same time, he's at the mercy of someone else. Now, with the Song of Wish, it is the standpoint because like it is the transition for both villains of motivations, and that's something I should have pointed out earlier. With Frollo, his motivation for just recklessly or with abandon just targeting the gypsy without any sort of rhyme or reason, and his for his actions to become more atrocious and more heavy and to become more aggressive from before, there is a good reason now. He's fallen in love with Esmeralda, and when I say love, I mean he's lusting for Esmeralda, and he's burning down all of Paris just to get an answer. Now, as for King Magnifico, he built this kingdom. He's been protecting it, kind of like Frollo. Oh my god, they're scarily similar. And then, like, when the people turn on him, he shows lyrics such as, like, I help you out, and for free, I give you a place to live for free, and this is how you repay me, with stabbing me in the back and not showing me even a thank you. Like, I feel like the authors dropped the ball on this one. They literally had the formula of success with, like, the Hunchback of Notre Dame. They could have just made it more, like, kid-friendly. It wasn't that hard. And so with the song, it was more upbeat. They were talking about things like simple gestures or acts of kindness. And it's like his transition for becoming a twisted villain, crushing people's wishes, is forced in. It's shoehorned in. And then him just taking the Book of Darkness, I'm not even going to bother looking it up, and just converting himself into like this horrible person of a villain, just crushing people's wishes out of a whim just so that he can keep a wishing star all for himself. Both of which explanations are assumed for, and the audience is only left to assume that he's only doing this to prevent his village from being nuked to the ground or being burnt to the ground. But no, the song doesn't do any of that. It just shows him just grab a book, become generically evil, and then chase the protagonist down for the sake of convenience. Okay, last but not least, well, I shouldn't say last but not least, but let's talk about the sidecast. Because the sidecast is rather something interesting, because most people don't remember the sidecast outside of the protagonist, but the sidecasts are somewhat interesting, because, like, they sometimes carry the life of the movie when the protagonist is not around, or they're meant to, like, be a contradiction or a juxtaposition, or to make it's just to make the movie more rich. So for the sidecast, we can argue for the Hunchback. Some of the more active ones are like the statues or the rocks, talking with Quasimodo, being their friends. As for Asha, it would be her friends with, yeah, it would just be her generic friends, which I don't know why, but they seem like stereotypes of like certain things or like people. I don't know. I just can't put my finger on it. Why they are portrayed the way they are. Anyways, it's really interesting to see how the sidecasts are displayed and portrayed. With Quasimodo, it makes sense. He's been alone. He's been stuck up the bell tower his whole life, so it's basically the rocks. And the authors took full advantage of that and made full fun of it, where they're just having fun with it all, just playing on the theme and narrative. With Asha and her friends, they're just more like emotional support, therapy bags, and more or less, yeah. There's just not much more to say. I mean, like, they're basic friends, except for that one guy who ends up betraying them, but he ended up getting corrupted by his wish of King Magnifico. That would have actually been great to show the wish going horribly wrong. Like, some people do not have the best of intentions. No Book of Darkness needed necessarily. Like, yeah, that's what it should have been, but you can't make fanfic. At this point, it's fanfic. I believe this video is half Wish fanfic and half Hunchback praise. But last but not least, I'm just going to talk about the protagonists and did they set out to achieve what they were set out to do? And with the Hunchback and Quasimodo, man, they fucking set me up and swerved me the fuck out of control. Like, I thought I knew where this was going. Nope, they took the wheel, started me off a fucking cliff. Because, like, rewatching the movie, I realized that Quasimodo wanted to be seen and approved by the people around him. The goal was never romance with a friend that showed him a little bit of kindness and gave him a chance. No. The point of Quasimodo and what he always wanted was to prove his character by showing he's willing to protect others out of kindness and the goodness of his heart and to be admired by the people and recognized as one of them. He has memorized what they do, how they behave, what they're like. He just wanted to be seen and heard and enjoy the presence of the people. With Asha, on the other hand, it's like, what are her motivations? It makes no sense. She's just too kind. No one is that kind, okay? We live in a world where people are like evil monsters. I'm just kidding, but like, it makes no sense where it's like, she's just kind for the sake of being kind. Like, is there any reason for her kindness? Like, why does she want to grant other people's wishes other than to overthrow King Magnifico's position? I'm not even making this shit up. She wanted to get her grandfather's wish and just get this dream achieved for her grandfather and for the rest of the town. And like, there's that motivation has never been clearly explained. And I don't know the reason for that. Like, why did they not take time out of their script to explain the motivation for her character? Why did she want to go out of her way to become this, like, granting king? I mean, she was even offered the position towards the end of the movie, and she had shown no interest in that sort of regard. So I just find it very interesting how the movie has turned out and how both two movies are eerily similar. They don't show the same themes, or they don't even show the same stuff. But yes, I'll get back to the more supernatural stuff. In The Hunchback of Notre Dame, the supernatural is portrayed like they don't even no, they don't do any magic. Actually, Esmeralda is the one that does magic. And then Quasimodo's talking with like the statues, and it's kind of heavily implied that the statues don't interact with anybody else other than Quasimodo. And maybe Frollo is the only other one who's felt the presence of like the statues being alive. And that sort of like expression of the supernatural just affecting them and changing their behavior drastically and playing with the plot as they see fit is very interesting. As with Wish, it's quite literally on the nose. You just throw magic around with no rhyme or reason. So whenever like the supernatural is referenced in Quasimodo or like Quasimodo and the Hunchback, it was with intention. It was with purpose. But with Wish, not so much. Anyways, that's my take on the two things. Hopefully, I've demonstrated why Hunchback is the superior version to Wish. I made like a whole script and like dumped it 3 times only to come up with this. This is just a pathetic portrayal. I wanted to make like a 40-minute video, but I know that would take way too long and that drained the shit out of me, causing me to have like a mental break. So I'm just going to keep the format short for videos going forward. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks for watching the video all the way through. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.